The last thing I want to say, because no one said it, is that a number of non-government actors have been to Washington over the last few months to go and talk to the Americans. One of those was the DA MP Emma Powell. Another one is an ex-South African venture capitalist by the name of Pinar. And a third is three Africana leaders who went across and did a briefing at the Hudson Institute where they spoke about South Africa. Now, in the South African press, and as a consequence of a intelligence report that's been leaked to some journalists, these parties, together and individually, have been blamed, together with some other third parties that went over, the sort of Solidarity and AfriForum guys, with sabotaging the relationship with America and being the reason why South Africa faces these very high tariffs. Now, one by one, I want to go through them. First is Emma Powell. Now, I've actually never met her in person. I've spoken to her once or twice on sort of Messenger, but I've asked people who I trust what she's all about. And they say she's a great person. She's the kind of person who sits in South Africa's parliament, which is mind-numbing, because she really wants the country to be a success. And her efforts in Washington were to say, do not take actions against South Africa that would do great harm to its people or its economy. And we need to find a way to do a fantastic and constructive deal together. And what has been said, to my knowledge, which is quite extensive on this, what has been said about her as sabotaging the country and bad-mouthing it, etc., is completely false. Why would someone that has so many options, who's very talented, actually go and sit in Parliament in South Africa as a sort of penance, I think, a sort of national service, and then take the opportunity to go abroad and try and sabotage the very country that you're working so hard to save? Second person whose name pops up is a chap called Pinar. I know Andre a bit. And as far as I know of his activities on South Africa and its trade relationships and economic relationships with South Africa, I think he has worked incredibly hard to convince people on the American side, and so have his colleagues, that what needs to be done here is a substantive trade and investment deal with the South Africans. And my knowledge of his efforts and what has been written about them are completely at odds with each other. And again, to my knowledge, here is someone who didn't have to do it. I mean, he's successful in many respects, seems well off enough, has very interesting life. Actually trying really hard to say, look, let's do what's in the best interest of this country and a substantive deal. And then the three, what they call the three Amigos, the three Africana leaders that went across and spoke at Hudson, went out of their way to say South Africa and its people have so much in common with Americans in terms of values and interests. And we need to find a way to make this work and to be a success. The fourth group that's gone across and also gets this sort of bad press is the sort of AfriForum and Solidarity crowd. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they're kind of Africana nationalist group, exists in South Africa. Hundreds of thousands, literally, of members between them. And they get press for saying they wanted to go out of their way to sabotage South Africa and undermine its economy. And I mean, I've had my run-ins with them. But my understanding is that they were very worried about Mr. Trump's initial offer to he had offered refugee status to Afrikaners, and some actually went across as refugees. And this worried some of these guys because they feared that Afrikaners might wish to exit South Africa in large numbers. And they've worked very hard to ensure that there will be a long and successful and prosperous future for Afrikaners within the country. So as in the case of Emma Powell and Andre Pinar and the three Amigos, it makes absolutely no sense that these people who spent every waking hour trying to make the country a success, in their case for Afrikaners to live in this latter group, would go about trying to sabotage the success of the economy that they're trying to save. And time and again in our experience, when the question comes up of why hasn't the South African government been able to do this transformative deal with the Americans, a deal, mind you, just to be reminded, that might even save the ANC from the hell that it's walking into. The blockages appear to sit on the side of the South African state, not on the side of these third parties. And I have no doubt that if South Africa appeared in Washington with a serious representation, a delegate with a mandate to talk and make decisions, I'm very confident in telling you that within a month, the skeleton of a transformative trade and investment and perhaps even broader diplomatic Atlantic deal with the Americans can be struck.